This is Voices from the Edge with Beck Davison and Phil Pearce.
Okay, so I'm here with Beck from Rippleshift. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks
Yeah?
for having me.
Not a problem at all. So Rippleshift is the new company that you've started. Tell me a little bit about it.
So Rippleshift started about a year ago after I left an organisation I've been working at for a very long time. And Rippleshift came to be because I have been very fascinated by perception shifting and how that ripples in relation to behaviour, thoughts, beliefs, assumptions, and how it can start to change everything. You change a perception, you change everything.
Hence the name Rippleshift.
Hence the name Rippleshift.
What came first, the name for the company or the idea?
The idea, definitely.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And was it one of those moments where you just like, Rippleshift?
It wasn't really my moment, it was my brother's moment.
Lie, say something else. Cut that bit out. Tell me about that moment on top of the mountain when it just came to you. So what happened then? You were speaking to your brother about what you wanted to do?
My brother has really helped me, and my brother continues to help me, and he just listened to me, and he was the one that was like, look, this is you, Rippleshift is you, this is what belongs to you, this explains everything.
Yeah, okay. And then in what sort of sense is it about changing people's perspectives? Is it for them to gain employment? Is it about overcoming something? Is it all aspects of the way we attach our thoughts to certain things?
I think it's all aspects. I think that people hold everything within them, and I think that often people can get stuck in a set of beliefs or assumptions, internalized beliefs, and I think that where I have placed myself is enabling people to have a deeper consciousness of what has been internalized, so that they can be in relation with it in a different way. And I think that when people start to realize that they've been told who they are, that they've been socialized to be a certain way, once they start to have that consciousness, they start to realize that possibility opens up for them and they can start to make different choices in the world. And I think that my particular focus always for all of my working career has been with people who might be deemed to be on the edges of society, who are discriminated against, oppressed, excluded. And I think that the society that we live within exploits, oppresses, discriminates. And I think that lots of those people who are harmed and suffer the most from that also have internalized beliefs about self. They have very low levels of self-worth, self-esteem, choices feel very limited. And I think that in the last year, I have worked with people who have been massively underrepresented for all of their lives. And I think that my work with those people has been to make conscious that a lot of these internalized beliefs do not belong to them. They belong to what they have been told they are. And once we can start to really disrupt and shift those perceptions of those internalized beliefs, people can start to really see the systems that they are in. They can have a deeper understanding of what they've tolerated, their thresholds of what they've tolerated. They have a much deeper understanding, therefore, of what they continued to be told. And they can start to disrupt and say, no thanks. And that shift of perception can just open up a whole world of possibility.
You know, I go into prisons and do talks about something very similar in that there's an organisation that I thought was doing brilliant work, and they probably are doing brilliant work to an extent, but they came and did a pitch to a group of prisoners, and I was in there as staff with a theatre company.
Yep.
And the guy basically said, The theatre company basically set up this project, 3-week project, and at the end of it, employers came in and watched a performance.
Yep.
So then you've got all these employers that are saying, we know you're here, obviously.
Yep.
We want you to come and work for us.
Yep.
But they are like a recruitment agency for people in prison.
Yep.
And their pitch was, if you go for a job and you've got a criminal record, they're going to rip up your application and throw it in the bin. But if you come to us, we can get you a job. But if I say, what are you willing to do? And your answer isn't, I'll sweep warehouses or shovel bleep if I have to, we don't want you to come. And I thought, why are we, because they've been in prison, why are we automatically saying that they're only good enough for certain jobs? And it was, that really annoyed me, you know, and I just think I'm in there sort of trying to say to people, you can still do whatever you want. You know, you can use this time to learn. Like, I speak about prison in such a positive way because it changed my life in a good way. So why wouldn't I talk about it in a positive way? Why would I not try and inspire other prisoners to see that there is possibilities after? But you've got all these people who are allowed to go into the prison and give this information of, your life's pretty much over unless you come to us. And it's that feeling of like that selfless, like, I'm benefiting from you coming to me because obviously there's funding attached to it.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that you're going to succeed is through us.
That's amazing work. And what I hear in that is that you are noticing a replica of a power dynamic. That the message is that we're here and we're kind of doing you a favour. So there was something about that. Look, we're here, we're doing you a favour, and in return, you're going to do the work that is the lowest paid, has the lowest worth, and we expect you to be grateful for in exchange for that work.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think it's a real trap. It's a really hard for the people that you're working with, because what and those people would have been given those messages a lot of their life, right? They may have grown up in places where there wasn't a lot of love or care or nurture or nourishment. They're holding a lot of trauma in their bodies, and then they're being told that again of like, yeah, that we notice you're here, and we're gonna reach out to you and we're gonna do you a favour. And I think that work that you're doing, it's massively important, and it's long-term work, because as much as you and I are talking about opening up possibility, actually that possibility is still limited for the very reason that those employers are talking about. And I think that my absolute core belief is that it has to start with self. So you and I think, have probably been in places where if there is a sense of othering, if there is a sense of come and rescue me, if there is a sense of somebody else is going to come and save me, without doing the inner work, the core work, then you are at the mercy to some degree of what others are wanting of you, from you. And I think it's both. I think it's the inner work of who have I been told I am? Who do I think I am? Who do I want to be? What purpose is calling me? What's giving me energy? And I think that inner work is really tough. You need people like you around.
Like you.
And me. So that people are held in a way that they can do that work slowly and carefully. And actually that shift of perception then can open up a different set of relationships. We are more likely to meet each other. That community then starts to grow, and you find other communities that give you a different sort of a feedback loop of you are welcome, you belong, you have worth, you are loved, we will nourish, we will nurture, and we'll do it together.
And do you think that just starts with belief? Like, if you tell somebody, like, what's the process? So you say that you work with people, obviously if they've been programmed to think a certain way, how does that process start? Like, there must be a lot of like people not believing you, or a lot of denial to start with.
It's a good question. I think I'm not a massive fan of the concept of denial, because I think there is something about just starting where people are at.
Yeah.
So if people have a set of beliefs about self and the world they are occupying, then that is a truth. That is a truth for those people. And actually, quite often what I'm working with is a feeling rather than a belief. So I think that what people are often coming to me with actually is a feeling of dissonance. So by which I mean they're having a feeling that something isn't right, and they're telling themselves that they're okay. So they're dealing with this space of conflict of I'm not feeling good in this space, but I'm going to tell myself that it is good. So there is a justification. There is a real desire to make things okay so that they can feel okay. And there is a point with lots of people that I work with where it just stops working. That kind of telling myself, using thought rather than the body or the heart, it just stops working for people. And that's actually the point when people come to me and I'm like, I don't like the way I'm feeling and I don't know what to do and I don't know what it is. So there is something about a place of, I think, dissatisfaction. People definitely feeling like something is wrong and they can't quite make sense of what it is. And I think that what I am often doing, so I think I'm doing multiple things at the same time. I think my belief is that we are living in a neoliberal, capitalist, patriarchal society, and we all suffer from that. Everybody suffers from that, and some people suffer more than others. And within that neoliberal paradigm construct, we are told that the work needs to be within us. So there is a meritocracy. You work hard, you'll get what you deserve. That's just not true. You can have two different people from completely different demographics who will do exactly the same amount of effort and work, and they will end up in completely different places.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that the work that I'm doing is both, yes, there is inner work. Let's kind of start to expose and treat very carefully how you're feeling. Let's believe it and validate it. I mean, there is something incredible, I think, about how many people are just not listened to, are not noticed, are not believed, and are not validated. And the power of just that can be incredible. I think that our basic human needs are to be noticed and to know that we matter. And I think that just that that feels very basic to me, and I feel that being in that space and gifting someone that can just be mind-blowing and heart-blowing. And that's probably where I start, actually. And then I think that then there is a kind of a slow zoom out of making sense of the places that people are occupying, whether that be a workplace, an organisation, a family, a town, and I think that being able to have an understanding of really kind of things that are talked about, like racism, like misogyny, that things that are talked about, like we sort of know what we are talking about when we say these words. Actually, when we start to really inquire about how those are internalized in us all, and have affected the way that we see the world and our worldview, I think that can start to help people make sense of their own internal work in relation to their external world.
Wow. That's amazing. And so do people need to, like you're saying that people come to you when they're feeling a certain way. Is this work that can be done with people who haven't got to that point? Like, is this just about helping people that have been so oppressed, or like is there not work you can do with people just on like a regular day, like people who haven't got to the point where they're feeling that low?
Absolutely. I don't necessarily see this as the location of the responsibility for this work isn't just in the person who is feeling the harm of it. Yeah. And in fact, I might go so far to say that the harm is within the system, and then in our neoliberal lens, we locate it in individuals. You are feeling trauma. You are traumatized. The trauma is within you. We are going to work with you. What is not shone a light on is, how did that happen? Like, what conditions were present for somebody to be harmed so much by other people, and what conditions were present with that person who has harmed? And these harms are interwoven into the very fabric of our society, in my belief. So therefore, it is everybody's responsibility. And I don't think that this is about... it's not... I'm not even sure that I would use terms like helping people, because I'm not really doing anything apart from asking people questions and believing and validating.
You're talking yourself down a little bit there. You are definitely helping people, because if you think about a therapist, all they do is ask questions. And it's just a very good way of getting people to open up the way that they think, because if you leave a question open long enough without responding, they'll keep talking. Yeah. And then they're constantly digging to the bottom of what they believe that subject to be about to try and continue that conversation. So you are definitely helping people, because if someone comes to you and they feel a bit down and then they leave feeling better, regardless, or more educated or more aware or whatever it is, then you're definitely helping people. So I don't want you to say that you're not. I just wanted to pull you up on that.
Thank you.
Go on, carry on.
I actually I've worked with women, particularly women in leadership positions, for a lot of years now, and recently I put on a drum and bass night with a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds, and they are emergent DJs. They are, learning a new trade. They are loving it, right? They're loving it, and I said that I would help them to put on a night. That kind of the boring bits, the organisation and the financial risk, I will take that, and let's do this together. And what emerged was that there were some really tricky issues, some quite complex issues that they had to deal with in the group. So there was an issue of somebody that wanted to MC who had been an issue with a woman. He'd been very drunk, and I don't really know what happened, but there was the complexity of this situation where they were having to contend with what to do about this situation. And what I'd started to think as a result of that is, I am not putting myself in a place where I am focusing on possibly the people who have the privilege and the power to acknowledge and to do something to prevent and respond to harm. So I have been running a workshop with a man, Joe Redston, on men talking to men. So what we have been doing is enabling or trying to equip. These are white men who are middle class, and the purpose of those workshops has been how to challenge sexist behaviour when you see it. So the sexist joke, the kind of casual, the bant, with a deeper understanding of this isn't just harmless fun. These behaviours have ripples all over the place, and they have ripples in a moment. These behaviours can make people feel extremely unsafe wherever they are, and also those people, those men, quite often can not. I don't mean those. I mean it's mostly men. Can go on to be involved in much more harmful behaviour.
Yeah.
And I think that so sort of going back to your question, I think that that there is something about, I think I'm finding myself wanting to be in a place where there is an equipping of how do we together contend with what can feel like sticky, complex issues, and if we are in it together, we can deal with it together. That's what community is about. And I think it's been an interesting thing, because I think that where we have gone from is, am I doing it on behalf of someone else? So do I intervene on behalf of the woman who is in the room, which I would call heroic behaviour, also quite masculine? Do I do it alongside a person who may be harmed, or am I doing it with and between? Are we all in this together? And I think from heroic to allyship to growing a coalition is where I would like us to keep nudging towards.
Yeah. I want to ask you this, and it's only because it's things that I've had directed at me before.
Yep.
But when it comes to, I mean, it's different for you because you're a female, so you can speak on behalf of females. But then, have people questioned the fact that you may be presenting on stuff that you've not experienced? Has that ever become, like I've been told I'm another white man trying to save the world, basically. Have you had any negative experiences like that?
I haven't, and as much as you're just to go back to the start of your question, yes, I am a woman, and I'm a woman of lived experience of sexual harassment for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not a black woman. I'm not a brown woman. I am not working class. I cannot represent all women.
Yeah.
And it is my responsibility to be doing that work of, I could also be called a white saviour.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of black women, and I go back to that point of, if I was speaking on their behalf, there is a massive problem with that. Massive problem, and I think actually there's been a historical problem with white feminism of feminism as a generic term has really benefited white middle class women for forever, and it still does. And I think intersectional feminism is definitely, it is coming more into the sights of white feminists now. But I think that the work, I still have to do that work of, I have no desire to speak on behalf of other people who are not asking me to do so.
Yeah.
I think coming to your question, I think it's about intent. So I think if your intent is to do something for someone else, I think that's different from the intent of doing something with someone else. I think that the replica, the power dynamics of doing something for. So we've seen that in drug services. For we have talked about that, where you have a dynamic of, I am doing something for you. I am I am doing something to help you be safe. There is a replica of a power dynamic of expert, I know best, and I'm going to do for you.
Yeah.
So I think for you, I think it is about your intent. You told a story this morning about how you were given some feedback and you listened, and what you did was say, I just didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that. I didn't know that. You listened, you learnt, you were humble about it, and then your action was different. That's an entirely different dynamic from, look, I'm doing everything I can. Be grateful. That's not that. That you did not give that response. And I think if we are open to our place in the world, then we will get that feedback that just helps us learn all the time, and then we are learning together as a coalition, as a community, and not as heroes.
Yeah, it is off-putting for me to get involved in stuff because of that label, you know, the white saviour. And I was actually making a film about sexual assault to try and highlight how men treat women. And that came from lots of conversations with women's experiences. And what was horrendous was I put a post on Facebook saying, don't post a comment, just inbox me if you feel comfortable, if you've ever experienced anything.
Yeah.
And the amount of people just that I know on my Facebook that message me with either physical or verbal assault was horrendous, and it just sort of amplified how important it was.
Yeah.
So we was filming a particular scene where the actor, she had a backless dress on, and the camera sort of comes up behind her, and it's as if it's an attacker approaching her. And the battery died in the camera during takes, so we went to the car, and I've opened the boot, so I'm stood, and there's a van behind me, so you can't see me from the road. The actor is stood in the roadside in a backless dress.
Yeah.
A white van pulls up, and the guy in it shouts, "Side boob." So I sort of, you know, when you hear something, you think, no. And I looked at the actor, and I looked at my girlfriend at the time, and their faces told me that what I'd heard was true.
Yeah.
So I've turned, as I've popped my head out, the guy's reaction was sort of like, oh.
Yeah.
So I've run up to the van and I've started shouting at him.
Yeah.
But what I didn't think was how has that made them feel? Because I realised I had my camera with a new battery, so I turned it on and I started recording him. I said, "What did you just say?" And I got his reg, and I got his mate who was in the van with him, and I said, "Do you think that's appropriate?" And he was saying he didn't do it. And I said, "If that was your sister or your daughter, you would not be, you wouldn't be happy." So, and they just completely denied it, even though all three of us heard the same thing. But then I had to stop myself and pull away, because if it would have gone any further than that, I've then put them in more danger.
Yes.
And also, they looked more scared after I'd confronted them than they did before. So in that situation, it might have been better to just sort of reassure the two girls that I was with and walk away. But I didn't, because it was just because of the film we was making. And, you know, I've been hearing all these stories about women who felt not powerful enough or confident enough to be able to confront somebody when something like that happens. And something just clicked in me, and my instinct was just to go and... But again, that can be seen as doing the wrong thing.
I think it's really complex and really nuanced, and it's contextual.
Yeah.
And I think that men influence men, right? So the evidence on that is very clear. Women do not influence men very much at all. So women may have an indirect influence on protection. So there may be something there about around traits of being heroic, of being the protector, being the provider. You know, these are socialized masculine norms that have been taken on, and those can be unhelpful at times. The evidence is very clear. It is men who influence male behaviour. Now, the complexity, and I think that the nuance of that is when you're in an actual real life situation, when you're witnessing something and you've got multiple lenses. You've got you've got the women, and you've got the offender, let's call him. Now, in that moment, you're not going to sit there and kind of go through a decision-making methodology
risk assessment in my head
about of what is the best thing to do, you are going to act on what you think is right in the moment. Now, some of that will be entirely intuitive. So some of that might be tapping into your heroic, it might be tapping into your protector, and that some of that response may well be upsetting or disturbing for those women. I just don't think there is a right or wrong. And I think that if there is a moment taken to say, what would you like me to do? Also, that isn't necessarily the right thing.
I think that they
do.
might have said, oh, no, just leave it, it's okay. But what they would actually want is to feel like somebody was there to sort of tell that person that this is unacceptable.
So there is there are multiple double binds going on here, right? Where there is no good outcome because women are often in a double bind where they are, I don't want to be protected and I want to feel safe.
Yeah.
It's a double bind. There is nothing, and women often cannot protect themselves. We know this. Women cannot. They do not have the physical capability to protect themselves. And quite often neither the emotional or psychological. If you are being shouted at like that, your strategies are to do all sorts of things: turn away, shut down, walk away. Your capability of being able to, in a moment, do something other, and maybe completely inappropriate, by the way. You might just be increasing risks to self.
Yeah.
So these are really complex scenarios. And I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think that I also, and this is me, I am not representing any other woman. I think I also have a problem with, you're the one who's been harmed. What do you want me to do about it? Yeah. It's back to the individual location of where the problem is. So because you're the one who's been affected, you're the one that now has to take responsibility for what action needs to happen. And I have to say, I'm like, actually, why? I'm the one who's just had to experience some crap. Why aren't people around me saying, this isn't all right? Why isn't someone else calling it out? Why isn't someone else stepping up? Why isn't someone else speaking out? And I think that we see that time and time again, that we are expecting the person who has been harmed to then do all of the work to call someone out for that behaviour. And this is why women don't go to court. This is why women do not complain to their employers. This is why women do not call stuff out. It is exhausting. And I think back to the creating the conditions, what you feel, I think, I would imagine that you are, if you had people in this workspace, what you're signalling, what you're exuding is a code of conduct. You are signalling what is okay, to the behaviour that is okay and not okay in this space. That's what you're doing. You don't have to say it out loud. Your whole way of being and how you are with other people gives that message. Now, often that's enough. That's all you need. That is all you need. And when you have got blokes, and we know these men, right, who are making comments about the actor with making what might be called casually sexist jokes, who feel able to even make a comment about how somebody looks or somebody's hair, or what is happening is a very subtle and light objectification. And it's not just of women, right? But women tend to experience most of the harms. And that signalling can just start to escalate and escalate.
Yeah, and I think the less people are called out. So if that's a regular thing for him and no one's telling him not to do it, that's okay now. So what's the next thing? It might be just grabbing a girl's bum in a pub. And then again, if he's not called out for it, it just keeps continuing because every time you get away with something, it pushes you to do it a little bit more.
Yes.
Which is, sort of, It's frustrating, and like I say, all the messages I got when it was sort of people saying, "Oh, they just did this and thought it was funny," and it's that whole thing of like, it's almost like intimidation. Like, I want you to feel powerless. That's sort of what it feels like. Like, I want to make you feel like I'm in control, and even though it's a complete stranger, like I've always said about wolf whistling, I don't think there's ever been a case where somebody on scaffolding has wolf whistled and a girl has gone, "Thank you, take my number." Like, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work. So why do they do it? And it is just about intimidation for me. That's the only reason you would do it, because there's a 0% success rate of that person ever communicating positively with you.
Yeah.
So why do you do it?
However, there may be reinforcement from mates.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So there is a sense of belonging. So it might not be that you're getting, here's my number, I'm so flattered. But what you are getting is a sense of belonging. Yeah. And I think that's what you're doing in intervening with the white van man is saying, I am not your mate. I'm not with you. I'm not in your tribe. Yeah. Now, as much as there may be a ripple on those women in that moment, actually, I would question how they felt a month later.
Yeah. I might message them both and ask. Just
why don't you?
I know, yeah. Yeah.
They will see you as a safe person. So as much as they may have, there was a moment, wasn't there? There was a moment.
I think the fear that came towards the end of the interaction would have been because it got heated. So then it goes from, I feel unsafe because a man's just said something, to there's potentially going to be violence between somebody I care about and a stranger. Yeah. I think when it got to that point, that's when I realised now's the time. I've said what I need to say.
Yeah.
I told him that his behaviour wasn't right. Yeah. In a nice way. And then now's nothing from here is going to be productive.
Yes.
So.
I mean, that's a great risk assessment.
Yeah.
But it is, and self-control.
Yeah.
Because there is something about when do you work out when an action is going to become counterproductive and actually becomes the very problem that you were trying to contend with?
Because it is then just toxic masculinity. It's just me out toxic masculinitying him, isn't it? So, but yeah, okay. So what's the plan? Like, it's been a year. You've got the idea of what you want to do, and it's not just, you haven't created an idea for a business. You've turned your thoughts processes that have been the same for most of your life. You've turned all your experiences into something that can, and I'm going to say it, help other people.
Okay.
What's the plan? Like, where does this go? Is it something that you go to schools to do? Is it working with services? Is it something that can expand? Because if this is you and how you see life and how you can help people, is there opportunity for other people to come on board and learn what you do and be a part of it? Like, how big can this be, I guess, is what I'm asking.
These are good, challenging questions for me.
On the spot as well. No prep. How big it can be, I just don't know. And I think my biggest problem is selling myself. I don't like it, and it makes me feel dirty. I'm exactly the same. I don't post anything on social media about the work we do. If it involves a different organisation that we've done, I'll tag them in a post or something like, we sell these T-shirts and different T-shirts, and the profit goes to. So I'll post a picture of what the profit goes on, and then that'll go out. But other than that, like, we don't do anything about like, it just feels braggy and it feels uncomfortable, and it feels like you're doing it for not the wrong reasons, but like when we deliver work, it's for the people in the room.
Yes, exactly.
It's not for people outside.
Yeah.
So I'm exactly the same, and I get told off so much by business people who are like, this is what you need to be doing. If you want to grow, you need to do this. So I'm going to give you that advice and not take it myself.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because I've just coached 2 women this week where I've helped them with their whole kind of marketing strategy.
Yeah.
And I need help, and Helen and you are helping me right now. And I think, so what do I think? I think I love talking about this stuff. I love that, and I would definitely like to do more of that and have more conversations with more people and kind of get a multiple lenses and differences in a space of how are we seeing the world. I love working with people who are, I mean, I'd said it before, who are on the edges. I think the edges are, you're more likely to be able to see the system that you're in the further you are away from the centre of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where change is happening quite often. It's the other. It's where something other is happening, and I think systems don't tend to change themselves. That the aims of systems are homeostasis. It's status quo, and systems will do everything they possibly can to keep the status quo, and will have to change. That's the kind of that's the irony, that's the paradox of homeostasis. You have to keep changing to keep the same. Think of addiction. You have to keep changing. It's really busy. Being addicted to whatever it is quite a busy life. You have to you've got to keep going. You've got to keep doing something. It doesn't look after itself. So I'm really interested in what is happening around the edges, and I'm also interested in the kind of concept of the paradox of privilege, that holding privilege kind of means that you just can't see it. It's a sort of core part of privilege. I said to these men the other day, actually, that part of privilege for me is feeling safe and not knowing that you are safe, not even realizing that you are safe. Yeah. And I think the concept of privilege, you and I talked about it the other day, I think the concept of privilege is getting less and less nuanced, possibly, particularly if you are a white hetero man, that there is a kind of assumption that you are holding privilege, and in some contexts you might well be. In other contexts, if you are working class, you may well be completely hidden, oppressed, exploited, unnoticed. So I think privilege is contextual, actually, and I don't think it's a static thing. So I'm interested in kind of poking that a bit. I think there is a lot of conversation at the moment, is there not, about people feeling like the world is full of doom. There's a lot of fear. I think people are feeling very cynical, hopeless, helpless, powerless. And I think that joy is the greatest form of resistance. I think fear-based mindsets are very helpful. It keeps us passive, keeps us very narrow in our goals, because we get into survival mindsets. I think it takes us into a place in the brain that can get into sort of fight or flight, because we are in that survival, or we get into freeze and flop, so we get very passive, withdrawn. I think that then what that does is that disconnects us. We lose a sense of community. I think my capacity to care about you when I'm in a fear-based mindset becomes massively diminished. And that then that lack of connection, collaboration, compassion, confidence, clarity, I think can be lost. And actually, I think if we are able to kind of really, and it's not forced, I'm not talking about performative joy. I think that if we can connect with parts of self that can bring us into front of brain, our executive functioning, we're much more able to think about complex spaces and decisions. We can connect with each other, and I think that this is what it is. This is, but we are not, none of us are going to be able to save the world. None of us are going to be able to do anything for more than 100 people at a time, if that. And so this is it. This is what we have. It's this. It's us talking to each other. It's our energy. It's our connection. It's our relationship. It's how we are in relationship. It's how our relationship then brings in other relationships. It's how then we do bring our energy into the relational, so that we can feel like we have some sense of agency and can do the same for others. We bring our own ripples. So in a business sense, to go back to your actual question, which I am actively avoiding, even the word business, just I'm like, I think I'm just really attracted to spaces that feel sticky, that feel juicy, that feel like they are complex, that feel stuck. I do love poking things to see if they can get unstuck. And then what happens when things do get unstuck can be like, so many things that are unpredictable, unexpected, beautiful.
So you spoke about what you call spaces that you've been in, that spaces that you want to occupy. What does that look like? Like, what spaces have you been in?
Yeah. The two things that I love doing most are coaching and hosting. So hosting / facilitating. I love being in groups of people, particularly in person, and the sorts of spaces that I have been invited to be in have been spaces which sometimes have led to challenging issues or challenging conversations, which I've been invited to be in to enable there to be a conversation within a held space. So the sorts of things that I've been hosting or facilitating, I did an amazing day with Helen on imagining a world without poverty with a number of different church organisations. So we did a whole day on sort of envisioning on what a world without poverty might look like and their place within it. So there is something again about that the unsticking, the sense of we're working so hard and nothing seems to be changing, and I think I am a massive believer in living into our futures. If we are doing the same thing that we've always done, we'll get what we've always got.
Yeah.
And I think in order to live in a future that is different, we have to imagine a future that is different. And in order to imagine a future that is different, we have to be able to have spaces where we can really, really allow ourselves to imagine things that might actually feel quite scary. Imagining something other that we have never experienced before is a skill. That's a skill. We kind of get told to stop doing it by the time we're about 5. And I think that imagining of something other is not an easy thing to do because we just don't know. And there are a load of unknowns in that space. And I think we need to grow the courage together to be able to not only imagine, but then to start to step into the future that we want to live. And just that, even that one step can just make masses of difference. I've done quite a lot of work with young people, with students in 3 different universities now, and some of that has been around freedom of expression. So I think polarization is a massive issue for us, and I think it is part of our current meta crisis, our kind of global interdependent crises that we are experiencing of multiple factors. And polarization is something that is actually disconnecting community and wedging people further and further apart, both in family and in communities, societies, globally. And I think I am fascinated about how we are using things like self-regulation initially, how we are using the body to come into self, to start to really be able to anchor self and ground self so that we can hear others and start to understand before we are speaking ourselves. And I think if we could just address some of those issues of things like polarization in communities, oh my God, don't have to agree. That's not what my aim is. That my aim in that space was listen, hear, believe, validate, look for shared understanding before you start throwing metaphorical punches. And so much could come out of that because there's so much space for there to be empathy and care and compassion, even in a space of disagreement. And with all of those things, those soft things, my God, we could do so much more. I've also done quite a lot of things on contextualizing identities. So that back to what we were talking about at the beginning about who are we, why are we, where are we?
Yeah.
So that kind of the process of externalizing, bringing out into the light the internalized messages that we have taken on, and seeing what happens in groups when people are doing that together. And the other thing that I've brought into those spaces is animism, actually, that we are so used to talking from human perspectives and seeing us as humans as being separate from the world around us, separate from nature. We even talk about nature like it's something other. And when we start to see ourselves as being fully interdependent and interconnected with everything around us, we are in relationship with everything around us, then we can start to take the lens, the view of other things that are non-human. So if we were to ask the sea what it wants of us, we might actually kind of hear something quite different from the thing that we are currently doing. And I've loved that shift of perspective. You know, those are there's sometimes shifts of perspective that I think that people are going to resist, and actually people love it. They love them. And I think I took that sort of concept into a university group who are learning how to be consultants, business consultants. And they brought me in to look at complex decision making. And what the sort of thing that I was doing with them is getting them to actively shift their perception. They had to live into a perception when they were looking at the decisions that they were making. So they had to be a tree. They had to be the person who might be making the fast fashion that they want to sell. No, they had to take multiple perspectives so that when they were making their decisions as those business consultants, they had to take all of those perspectives into account. And therein lies the complexity. They had to think about where the coltan had come from in their phones and who had dug that up from the ground that they were using to be able to be on. You know, they had to think about the 13-year-old boy in DRC, and suddenly those purposes of I just want to make loads of money start to get disrupted and start to become more tricky.
Yeah.
And I think for that particular age group, you know, they were early 20s. I think that's massively, massively important. And then other things I have done, worked with teams on things like values-led leadership, values-led behaviours. I have worked with most of the teams, organisations I'm working with are primarily global majority. so minority white people. And I mean, that's the kind of edges stuff of those teams are often working with people who no one will work with, and who have been forgotten and who are easy to forget, and those people and those teams need nourishing, and I think I just don't know, I sound like I am the one who's giving them. There is something about that consciousness of place in the world and being able to have a collective sense of resilience of why we are doing what we are doing and who we are doing with it with, and what matters and why it matters and what is my place here. And I love facilitating those spaces and places. Yeah.
Well, one thing that definitely comes across is passion. You know, and I know that anyone watching this will see that. You know, the sort of the knowledge around the stuff that you're talking about and the passion that comes through is just, it's a lot. It's ridiculous. I could just sit and listen to you for hours. I just want to say thank you for coming in. Thank you for sharing everything. And I hope this has been sort of the kick up the bum to do more social media stuff, because when you was talking about the doom and gloom, it's because people like you are posting the positive things. All we get to see on social media is the negative stuff. And again, I'm giving you this. Yeah. I'm not taking it myself. So.
Maybe I'll interview you next time, Phil.
But no, I really appreciate it, and it's meant a lot to me being able to listen, because we've had a very, very brief conversation about it before you came in. But yeah, it's really, it's I can't even, it's not, I was going to say mind blowing. It's more like it's just dead interesting, and like it's not stuff that, it is stuff that I've thought about but not ever been able to know that I've thought about it. Yeah, and then when you put it into words, it's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. So yeah, I do. I really appreciate it.
I'm really grateful to you. It's been an honour to be with you.
This is your first podcast as well. Oh, that makes it more special. Makes it more special. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Phil.